Hello and welcome back to TVP World. My name is Alex Simlinski and these are World Talks. Narcissistic Personality Disorder, characterized by a pattern need of grandiosity, admiration, and lack of empathy, is a mental health condition that can impact various aspects of an individual's life, including relationships, work, and overall well-being. While narcissism is often discussed in popular culture, the question, does the lack of historical thinking and therefore lack of thinking about the consequences of one's actions have an impact on the rise of this occurrence? To discuss this issue, we are joined by Professor Andrzej Kokoszka, Professor of Psychiatry from the Medical University of Warsaw. Good morning, Professor, and welcome to TVP World. Nowadays, with the rise of social media and everyone being able to record each other and then just post it on the internet, the actions of people who are in the spotlight and sometimes their, let's say, eccentric behavior, very often is labeled by others on the internet as crazy or mad. What do you have to say to that?
I mean that I have such questions. I get such questions very often. But I explained that usually it is not a question of serious mental disorder, because people with psychotic delusions or hallucinations cannot hide them, cannot modify their behavior. Similarly, persons with persistent delusions cannot change their behavior. So we usually are in the range of personality features. I wouldn't say even personality disorders, because some features in some conditions are adaptive and in another are maladaptive. Narcissism, healthy narcissism is important for our well-being. Malicious narcissism is harmful, but not always for everybody. Some people who have grandiosity feelings about themselves have really unique achievements.
So then how can we differentiate from this healthy narcissism that you mentioned with the malicious one?
I would say that it depends on social functioning. I mean that people narcissistic needs, desires can motivate to be the best in some area of competitive world, and if one is able to find a similar person for living, is not a problem. The problem appears when they cannot fulfill their needs. And it happens quite often that people who are very grandiose, I can say that I had several patients who planned to earn enough money by the age of 40 and don't have to work anymore. And they managed this. But it was the beginning of crisis, so it was illusion. Mm-hmm. That the narcissistic features becomes a problem when they are not fulfilled. Mm-hmm. We are talking about narcissistic wound. The people feel harmed, that I'm not like a crystal, because the crystal is okay, but it is broken. And it is not acceptable because I should be unique. So it is a really complex issue. And I am afraid that it's not a problem for a majority of people. It is a problem for people having narcissistic personality. The problem for others is that they have no or have very limited empathy. And they use people instead be with them. The instrumental attitude toward other people is the problem. Many cannot survive in the relation in spite of, let's say, social and financial gratification, because lack of empathy causes that their needs are not respected.
And now, what about the younger generation? Now, from what I've read here, they have serious problems with common sense, well, let's say, diagnosis of these discussed features. I mean, you know, what is the situation of the younger generation, them being exposed so much to all this social media? You know, what is your comment to that?
I mean that, again, it is more complex problem. I would say that another feature which is quite often coexisting with lack of empathy is lack of possibility to experience the remorse or feeling guilty. And eventually such persons who present themselves as a unique, have really achievements, have no empathy due to narcissistic features, but they also cannot experience remorse or feeling guilty. So they are not interested in any rules. They are not respected in needs of other people. They are not interested in past experience, and they don't take into consideration needs of other people when they are planning something, because they cannot change. Because if I want to change some maladaptive schema in my personality, I have to recognize that there is something wrong with me.
So could you give us an example?
I don't have such possibility.
Could you give us an example of a figure like this? Maybe a cartoon example, or maybe.
I mean, Robin Hood is a good example. He pretended to not be a criminalist, not to commit a crime and to make robbery, but he introduced justice. It is very common rationalization of the valuation of social rules. He took goods, rich people, and distributed to a poor one. But so he was admired. But probably due to such features, he was not afraid of being punished. He was not afraid even to lose life. So he behaved like a person who is very strong and brave, and he was admired. And let's say followers of Robin Hood could be surprised that he didn't achieve long-term goals, because long-term goals needs consideration of needs of other people in our actions.
And then, Professor, would
And
you
it
also
needs
say
empathy.
that right? And also, does this also need the thinking about consequences?
Yes.
Right? Because that brings me to my next question. Because, like I said at the beginning in the introduction, this lack of historical thinking, right?
Yes.
How does that affect people nowadays? And do you think it is more now present than it was before?
I mean that it is a really, really important problem, and it depends on generations. When I am discussing with friends from my generation, and they are asking me how to recognize that someone doesn't experience feeling guilty, or how to recognize that someone is very bright, has, let's say, high IQ. IQ measures cognitive abilities, but the people don't recognize, don't take into the considerations that many people have very low emotional intelligence. And there are some people who are genius and make achievements in exact science and in business, and their emotional development, their emotional abilities are like small child emotionality. And again, it is not frequently taken into the consideration. So when I have a peers, I am advising, look on the interpersonal functioning of those people in their close relations, in their long-term collaboration with other partners, but it doesn't work for younger generations because I am trying to introduce the notion of interactive personality of our time. Neurotic personality of our time was introduced by Karen Horney at the beginning of the 20th century. She emphasized anxiety and needs to complete desire to relieve helplessness and anxiety. It's not very common now. Then was a narcissistic personality of our time. It was introduced by Slash in the response to the development of consumption after the Second World War. And many narcissistic personality shaped that time are still alive. But modern society, modern generations don't take into consideration long-term experiences. I can say in a private way. When I was about 18 in 70s, the lifelong experience of my grandfather was very important for me and helped me plan my future.
So
for my children,
just to make sure that I'm on the same page with you, so what you are describing, it has to do with the environment that people are growing up in, right? And what they're experiencing, and then...
But it doesn't work now. I can say that my children were not interested in experience of my father, who was a doctor, and who changed his office 3 times during 60 years. They are changing their office frequently.
Much more often nowadays.
The situation is not stable. The situation is changing rapidly.
All right.
So to adjust to this long-term relationship, especially in professional activity, are obstacles, not advantage.
We have to put a dot right there. Professor Andrzej Kokoszka, Professor of Psychiatry, Medical University of Warsaw, thank you very much for joining us here today, this morning on TVP World.
Thank you for the invitation.
And with that, it's a wrap for this edition of World Talks. But as always, do stay tuned to TVP World for more breaking news, updates, and commentary.